To explain how this will work. Lynn, good morning, and thanks for your time this morning. How will this campaign actually work? What are you asking these women to actually do?
Morning, Yuveka. I think there's some misunderstanding. I'm from the ELRC.
Oh, is that where you're
Yes,
from? Okay,
ELRC.
so it seems that, so this is what we're talking about. Are we
Correct.
talking basic education?
Correct.
Are we that one?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so it seems we have a bit of a mess up, but let's do that one anyway. Let's chat about that. And it is basic education now to clamp down on sexual offenders with tough new measures. So what is the Basic Education Department actually planning to do here? What are the plans?
I'm actually representing the Education Labour Relations Council, which
Yeah.
is the bargaining council that has concluded this collective agreement. In essence, what we intend to do, we want to synergize the processes. Currently, the educators are subjected to an internal disciplinary hearing when there are allegations of sexual misconduct against the learners. That process
Against learners?
Yes.
Not just teachers?
No,
then?
no, that's
okay,
just
against pupils?
No, I want to limit my,
Yes.
my input to the learners.
Okay.
Now, that process will be run by the provincial departments of education. Once those educators are dismissed, they will refer the dispute to ourselves, which is the ELRC. Then we hear the matter afresh, because now they refer it to us as an unfair dismissal. In that process, we call all the learners that would have been witnesses in the internal disciplinary process. Now, if the learners, due to the fear of secondary trauma, because they have to testify again what had happened in detail, they then decide not to show up in our processes. In the absence of those learners, our arbitrators will reinstate the educator that would have been dismissed.
And let me reintroduce you, Cindy Foka. Yes, you're from the Education Labour Relations Council, the General Secretary. Cindy, just take us back a step. What kind of cases are we looking at? I mean, over the past couple of years, we've seen these videos emanating. We've seen lots of, pupils and sexual activities being filmed. What exactly are the cases that you would involve yourselves with?
They would range from an educator who's alleged to have raped a child.
Yeah.
Whilst that matter would have been referred to SAPS to run their investigation. But we look at it from the dismissal point of view. We check whether the dismissal process, the processes leading up to dismissal was fair or not, so that we make a finding. If upon the arbitrator being satisfied that the process was fair and indeed there's sufficient evidence to find on balance of probabilities, because the court manages it differently.
Yeah.
It is beyond a reasonable doubt, but our process is on balance of probabilities. Now that arbitration award will either confirm that the dismissal was fair, therefore there is no legitimate claim from the educator who's aggrieved, or alternatively, they would find that the dismissal was unfair and that educator will be reinstated because there won't be evidence. Now, the challenges that we had, we've come across cases where the arbitrator would, from the gatherings from the employer and so forth, would be able to see that there's a potential case that indeed the educator has committed this offense.
Yeah.
But in the absence of that learner who's a child in the process having come forward to give evidence, the arbitrator has no choice but to dismiss the case, which means therefore that educator is going to go back to the schooling system and possibly commit the same sexual offense.
Okay, so you ensure that all sides of the story are heard, if I'm
Correct.
understanding you
Correct.
correctly, and you make sure that learners or pupils get to the process without having to suffer for it.
Correct.
Am I correct?
Correct.
So when do you run this process? I mean, if there's a court process and a legal process, are you running this parallel to this? Are you running it before to say, like, if this goes to court, no, you have our support as a pupil?
We run it parallel because we're focusing purely on the contract of employment. The courts have their own processes, so our role is limited to the contract of employment itself. So that's why the processes are run parallel. But the concern from ourselves as the council has been the fact that we are obliged by the Constitution to protect not only the rights of the educators, but the rights of the children as well. Now, if they have to testify in the internal process, they have to testify in our processes, and again in the SACE processes, which is more concerned about the professional conduct of the educator. That learner is subjected to secondary trauma at each instance that they are required to come and testify. And equally, we are saying we want these educators to be out of the system.
So whatever information you get out of your process, will that be admissible then in a court case if that had to go without the pupil having to go to court then?
No, not really, because we are limited to the contract, the issues centering around the contract
just
of
the school
employment
and the role of the teacher.
Yes,
and all of that. And
yes.
teacher unions are on board with this, and there's no issues, no challenges with
No,
this
no issues at all. There are concerns from other teacher unions, because this agreement in essence is replacing the internal process. What would happen with the internal process? The educator, if they are found to be, if they are dismissed as a result of that process, they still have a right to go and make an application to appeal to the MEC of a respective department. And then whilst that appeal is to be finalized by the MEC, they'll continue enjoying earning a salary whilst they're at home.
Yeah.
Now, in some instances, because it takes more than 3 years for the appeal process to be finalized, whilst the person is dismissed, sitting at home but earning a salary pending the outcome of the appeal process. Now we lose the witnesses in that process, because by the time it eventually comes to us, when the appeal is dismissed by the MEC, we still need to locate those learners who would have relocated to other provinces. Some would have exited the schooling system because
so it takes that long, does it? Very quickly, long. Cindy, before I let you go, is this already being done, or you will be? These are plans for the future.
The collective agreement has been signed, and it was signed on the 25th of September. Now we are working on the administrative arrangements with the respective provincial departments in terms of how they refer these cases to ourselves, as opposed to them conducting disciplinary hearings.
Okay, well, good luck to you, and it'll be very interesting to see what progress and if it makes a difference to the processes. Thank you very much, and apologies for the confusion. She is actually Cindy Foka. She's the General Secretary of the Education Labour Relations Council.